Welcome back, Hot Wheels collectors. I've got another vintage video here for you today. This time we're looking at 1975 and all of the Hot Wheels that were released in that year. I have every single casting produced, multiple variations, multiple promotional cars, and the rare alternate color cars to show you. Only missing 2 or 3 vehicles, which I will describe to you and show you in a picture at the end of the video, but not part of the main line. So if you're just collecting the main series of vehicles, this is all of them. Let's swoop down and take a closer look at some of these cool vehicles. I've got them sorted alphabetically. My 1974 release video from last week seemed to be pretty popular, but it was a tad long at almost an hour, so we're going to try and shorten this one up, even though there are more vehicles to look at. A little less descriptiveness for each one specifically. But first, just a general overview. Starting in the first position, we've got the American Victory, Backwoods Bomb, 2 variations here. The Chevy Monza 2+2, the Chiefs Special, and Dune Daddy, a couple more paint variations. Emergency Squad, Grasshopper, Gremlin Grinder. Let's go back over to keep the alphabetical sort going here. With the Gunslinger and Large Charge, Mighty Maverick, one of my personal favorites, the Monte Carlo Stalker, and the Motocross 1, next to 3 Mustang Stalkers, Porsche 911, or P911, is simply what Hot Wheels called those ones, and the Paramedic, basically a super van, but it was called Paramedic. Ramblin Wrecker, 2 variations there. Ranger Rig, basically the Emergency Squad, but repainted and renamed. And what's this one? Street Eater. Next to it we've got the Sand Drifters. Look at all those nice vans. If you're a van man, you're going to like this row. Super Van. One of Hot Wheels' most popular castings and still used to this day, decades later. Look at all these sweet old variations. And another favorite, a new car released for this year, was the Torino Stalker. Very similar to the Monte Carlo Stalker, but slightly different. 2 variations of the Tough Customer. I like that name a lot. And 2 more variations of the Vagabomb, as well as Warpath, another cool name. Anyways, let's take a closer look at each car. A little bit more detail, more on the variations rather than the history of the casting. These videos are going to get too long if I describe when and where and every which year that they were released and all the different names they came out in. As you can see, many castings share the same exact vehicle but with a repaint and a rename, so it does get a little confusing at times, but overall this will tell you exactly what they're called by Hot Wheels. So if you're looking them up or trying to buy them or hunt them down or sort your collection, maybe this will help you out a little bit. American Victory made its debut in 1975. This is the first year for this release of the casting, and a pretty nifty looking race car. There's the base. Similar to the previous year's Steamroller, but with subtle differences. Maybe not quite so subtle actually. Same profile, and I'm sure one that was great on the racetrack. This is the only variation from 1975. Backwoods Bomb, another new casting for 1975. I've got 2 examples here. Really cool old camper truck. I think it was based on a Dodge or something like that, or an old Chevy. doesn't have anything on the base. And interestingly, this vehicle shared its base with the Supervan, the Emergency Squad, the Ramblin' Wrecker, the Ranger Rig. It's the actual base of it itself is a very well used piece in a lot of different Hot Wheels castings. But the difference between these two, if you haven't noticed already, is the windows. This one has a blue tint window variation, which extends to the seats because the seats are all one with the windows. Whereas this one has the smoked or black window tint and seats. Both are about equally common. One isn't too much harder to find than the other. Although in my experience, I think the blue tint one was slightly more difficult for me to find. These will range between $50 and $100 depending on condition. Chevy Monza 2+2 makes its introduction in 1975 as well. A very cool little car, based on an actual car, and the scale and specifics of it are very well built, I would say. This one has the name right on the base, patented US and Canada. Now the common version was the orange one that you see here, featuring the one-piece interior windows as well, just like the old Backwoods bomb. And the alternate color was the green one. This one is quite a bit more difficult to find. The orange one in this condition will run you probably between $50 and $75, whereas a minty green one could fetch as high as $200 plus. This one's got a few nicks and flea bites on it though, so I think I only spent about $50 or $60 for it, but still a very nice example. The Chief Special. This is the Oldsmobile 442, although never titled that as a casting. We saw this car previously in 1974, but there has been quite a change, even though at first glance it just looks like a paint job. Now featuring a chrome plastic base, whereas the previous version had a metal base. Same base though, just different title on it. As you can see, this one had Police Cruiser. That was the 1974, whereas now it's got a bar cast over. Now the big difference here for this casting and ongoing was that the hood is now cast shut, whereas in the 1974 version you had an opening hood revealing a metal engine underneath. And also new is the elimination of the red siren on top of the roof. Now it is a blue one, and I think that might be one piece with the windshield. It's hard to say for sure, but not to be confused later on with this example, which we'll look at in 1976. This one has the taxi kind of cast in place on the rooftop versus having the light and horns. Otherwise, another exact same car. The Chief Special would later become the Maxi Taxi, but that's another story. The Dune Daddy, a rename of the 1970 casting Sand Crab, and also now eliminating the window type roof that was on the Sand Crab in 1970. This one just features the little plastic window at the front of the vehicle. We've got two versions here. The green one is the most common version, whereas the orange was an alternate color and is quite a bit harder to find. Reportedly there are several different shades of green for this variation. There might be a couple others, but I only have one. I have never seen any real differences in the colors of green, so that is not my observation. The Dune Daddy is an all-metal casting with its title on the base and a really cool motor with exhaust sticking out the back. This would be the only year we'd see the Dune Daddy until one last reappearance in 1980 for the Wisconsin Toy Company promotional. Emergency Squad. This is a very popular casting to this day and is still in production. This is the first release of it with the first paint job ever, and was based off of a truck in, at the time, a hit TV series called Emergency. I have not watched this TV series, but anyways, nice little truck. And more information on the base sharing of this vehicle versus, say, the Ramblin' Wrecker. You can see the bases are all the same, as well as the other vehicles I listed. This was a cost-cutting effort by Mattel back in 1975, and I think they did well by it, as to this day, this vehicle is still being used, unlike many of the other cars we've already seen. Many more variations of this truck with nearly the same tampo work will appear in later years, and probably was released throughout the years without the Redline wheels. Grasshopper. Grasshopper. Yes, the Grasshopper makes an appearance in 1975. This is actually a brand new casting for 1975 because we've lost the motor from 1974, which this vehicle, as we'd stated earlier, was based on a 1971 casting from Hot Wheels. And also quite a significant change in the front grille appearance for the motorless Grasshopper Jeep. And also paving the way for the Gunslinger. Basically the same vehicle as the Grasshopper now, except with a different interior that supported the large gun that you see. We'll get to that truck in a little bit though. So the Grasshopper, this is the last time we would actually see the Grasshopper as a casting in the civilian version ever. The first and only time it was released, never to be seen again other than as the Gunslinger. Gunslinger. Here we have the original Gunslinger, based of course off of the Grasshopper we were just looking at not too long ago. Got some interesting little shells, big huge shells I should say, under the gun. The gun is often lost on these models when bought loose because a very small pivot, easily broken, and also the windows are pretty susceptible to damage if you're buying these loose. So be wary of that. This is actually a very expensive model. I think it ran me about $90 or $100 to buy. And the main reason, I have to show you the 1976 version. The first thing you might notice is just that the paint on this one is dull and this one is shiny. That's one difference. But the chief difference here is the addition of the clip in 1976 for the gun to rest on. Whereas the 1975 version did not have a clip. Other than that, the two vehicles are basically essentially the same. It's just a lot harder to find the original one without the gun clip than it is the 1976 version. This vehicle in itself had a pretty short shelf life as well, just like the Grasshopper, and we'd only see it one more time with Blackwall wheels before it was canned. Large Charge. An apparently all-electric vehicle based on its tampos. This is a heavy casting and a great racer on the track. This was the first year for the release of the Large Charge, 1975, although some reports out there indicate it may have come out in late 1974, although I don't have any evidence of this on hand to verify that. Either way, this is a popular casting that's been used throughout the years, however going by several different names, such as in 1985 Ultra Hot's Silver Bullet, and then later on the Aero Flash. Mighty Maverick makes an appearance for 1975, this time featuring no spoiler on the back as originally seen in the 1970 casting of the Mighty Maverick, based on a Ford Maverick. This car, exact same casting, did come out in 1973, but it was called the Street Snorter, and now it's got the new paint job and back with its original name Mighty Maverick on the base, as you can see. The blue one is the common car and the green one is the alternate. However, common is kind of a pushing the limits of how common this car is. It is a pretty hard car to find in mint shape, and I think would run you probably about $30 to $60 depending on how many people are out there looking for it at the same time. The green one, I think this one cost me about $70 or $80 in this condition, but a mint version can sell for well over $200 due to its rarity as an alternate color car. Monte Carlo Stalker. As I said earlier, this is one of my favorite castings, and it was a pretty popular one too. There's been lots of these found out there. I have a whole tub full of these things. But we've got two examples here. Variation on the paint color. Not sure if the camera's going to pick this up, but the one on the right is a lemon yellow, whereas the one on the left is a dark yellow. Now this is a variation that we would see commonly throughout the next couple of years in Hot Wheels. in a lot of different models. But this was the first time this casting was released, and the first time that the two different yellow paints were observed. Here is by far one of the most interesting castings, one of two actually, for 1975, the Motocross 1. This delicate little motorcycle was, along with the Street Eater, the only time a motorcycle was released in the Flying Colors mainline series, up until modern day basically, where now we do see motorcycles in the mainline quite often. These were the first two never to be seen again after this year. I'm not sure, but I think they may be based on some of the old Rumblers series bikes, but I don't really know for sure because I don't have any Rumblers in my collection. So if any of you Rumblers collectors are out there, let me know. Interesting, both are a different casting based on the plastic. You can see the seat difference and the tank difference. So we've got the Motocross 1 and the Street Eater. Might as well just talk about them both at the same time here. They got a very fragile little kickstand and a two-piece wheel, actual metal wheel with a plastic tire, and just really neat. Obviously not to scale with the rest of Hot Wheels. They are quite hard to come by in good condition. Each of these set me back well over $200, and it took quite a while to find them. Now here's a popular casting, the Mustang Stalker. This was the most commonly found variation, featuring purple and orange tampos. Let's take a quick look at the base first before we go on to the other two that I have pictured here. The second hardest one to find featured red and blue tampos. A minor difference here. Now this one here, in this nice of condition, is worth about $150 to $200. This one here, if you were able to find it mint, would run you at least $450. And I think in this condition, I even still spent about $160. Now for the most coveted and hardest alternate color car to find, featuring the same rare red and blue tampos, but with the white paint job. This is an extremely hard car to find and can easily fetch over $500 in mint condition. And this example here ran me about $300 when I bought it. Porsche 911, there you are. We mistakenly had you in the 1974 video, but only briefly. The rightful place for the P911 was 1975. Now, the 74 version did come out here, you can tell, because of the original Redline capped wheels, which had completely been used up by 1975. Porsche Carrera on the base, even though it was listed as a P911. And in between the rear taillights, under the whale tail, you can see Porsche cast right into the fin. That was the 1974 version. In 1975, they eliminated the Porsche name, and on the base, it was now just called P911, with the bar cast over the original Porsche Carrera nameplate. The alternate version, of course, for this car was the white one, also featuring no Porsche casting on the back, and the P911 base, interestingly without a bar, so there was a base change at some point. Now this car has been used and was continued to be used for many years after in different paint variations, and paint jobs I should say, but this one here is the hardest to find, rarest Porsche 911 that Hot Wheels ever made, and this car can set you back close to $1,000 in mint condition. I think I spent about $400 or $500 for this one little Porsche. The next vehicle in alphabetical order is the Paramedic, but really this was just the super van, retitled Paramedic for the paint job, but nowhere on the base does it actually say that. I don't think. Nope. In fact, none of the vans ever were titled on the bases as super van or otherwise. We'll just take a quick reference check here. So what we're going to do is, because there's so many super vans, I'm actually going to talk about these two Paramedic vans when we do the super vans. So let's move on to the Ramblin Wrecker. Ramblin Wrecker. Now this is a cool truck with some interesting history. Larry Wood actually had his phone number right on the side of the Ramblin Wrecker, and when this vehicle was released, kids were calling him non-stop. So a later year, when it was released later on, they actually blocked out the phone number with a little blue tampo. So this was the only year that you would see the phone number on the Ramblin Wrecker. And of course the Redline wheels. We already talked about the base, so the difference between these two is the window variation. Another common window variation that we saw on all of these similar type castings. We've got the black window and the blue smoky or black smoky window and the blue window. Not sure which one is rare or harder to find. I think each of these are worth anywhere between $50 and $100 depending on the market and the condition of the vehicle. Which brings us to Ranger Rig. Same variation as the Ramblin Wrecker, blue windows and black windows available. Each of them about equally hard or easy to find, however you look at it. Bases are the same. And of course this is the same truck as the Emergency Squad that we saw at the start of the video. Just retitled and different paint job. This one would later come out with Blackwall wheels as well, but we'll get to that in the appropriate year. Sand Drifter makes an appearance in 1975, a very brief appearance, as this was the first and last year this vehicle was part of the series. Never to be produced again, until later on retooled, I think, for the RLC Club. I'm not sure on that though. We've got two versions here. The yellow one is the common one. The green was the alternate color variation. It's kind of like a half truck, half car, sand dune, buggy type vehicle. Got a fragile little window on it that's often broken off. And I think this cover, oh yes it does, it opens up. I think I've never even opened this before. Revealing a pickup truck box full of tools. So that can also be missing on used and worn out examples. This yellow Redline Sand Drifter would be worth about $30 or $40. It's fairly common. But the green alternate color one is quite a bit harder to find and can fetch anywhere between $100 and $150. Mine's a little bit chipped up. I think I spent about $50 for mine. And here is my Supervan collection from 1975. Basically every Supervan released that year except for two extremely hard to find promotional vehicles, which I'll show you a picture of on my computer in a moment. Some very expensive and hard to find vans in here. These things seem to be rapidly increasing in value year over year as I've been tracking the prices of them. Overall, a very cool vehicle with a lot of different variations to talk about, and hence why I've kind of lumped them all together, even though the Paramedic was not named the Supervan for the card work or the blister cards. All these other ones are Supervans. This casting is used to this day and is a very popular casting due to all the real estate, let's call it, on the side of the vehicle for putting promotional things like King Radio and KGW radio and all sorts of stuff that's been issued on them over the years. This, of course, is a brand new casting for 1975. First, let's take a look at those two Paramedics. The variation here, once again, is the blue window and black window, which also forms the seats in these vehicles, just like the other vehicles that we looked at, and like many Hot Wheels of the era. These ones feature a chrome plastic base, and I'm pretty sure this was the only year, it was the only year that we saw the Paramedic in white. It would later come out in yellow. We'll look at that in the future years, of course. These two vehicles here, price-wise, as I said, the market has been changing quite a bit on these, but I would say in this condition you're looking at probably nearing $100 each. And I probably spent about $60 or $75 when I bought these a couple of years ago. Now the next up, most common van that you'll find for 1975 was the black Supervan. However, there are some very uncommon variations in here to look at. A common one is the black one with the metal base. This is a very heavy vehicle. Really nice piece that really rolls well. And a variation with the chrome plastic base is harder to find, strangely, but not overly hard to find. So these vehicles here will run you between $30 and $60. More, again, for the chrome plastic base in my experience. And probably a carryover from the Paramedic van's chrome plastic base, although it could be from any number of them. This one here is a rare variation, the rarest of the black ones. It has the blue window tint and seats, along with a chrome plastic base. Now, on my old HotWheelsCollectors.com database, which I've saved, there was an image of one that had a metal base with blue windows. I have never actually seen it, and have since given up looking for it because it's just too exhaustive to see one black van after another on my searches. Now, the other variation with these vehicles is, well, no, I'll talk about that on the purple one because I can't really show you, but you see there's a little turn signal right up there. It kind of juts out from the casting. Well, some vehicles didn't have the turn signal. Other than that, the vehicle casting was exactly the same, and here's an example from this Motocross super van. One with turn signal, one without. So we might as well look at those ones next here, although I kind of skipped over the blue flame van. We'll get to that in a minute. These are extremely hard to find in mint condition. The variation other than the turn signal here is the blue tint window and seat versus the black tint. Both of them seem to be about equally as rare, and this one here is absolutely pristine condition. I just saw one of these sell last week on eBay for near $250, I believe, or more, US. I spent, I think, $150 for it back in the day, and this one has a couple of flea bites, but still very nice condition. That one set me back about $125. So you can't be too picky when these come up. If you want one that's even half decent, you kind of got to spring for it. Now, another very rare variation, probably the hardest find variation here, is the Cutoff Canyon exclusive playset blue super van. Basically the same as this very rare blue tint version of the black one. It shares the chrome plastic base and the blue tint windows. However, the blue paint behind those awesome flames makes this vehicle worth $1,000 in mint condition. In this condition, it's still worth about $300 to $450. Quite a nice little piece. And the final two super vans I have to show you for 1975 were promotional. Actually, the same radio station, I believe, King Radio and 62 KGW radio. I might be wrong on that. Someone can correct me, of course, in the comments below. But this van here is the easier to find of the two, in my experience. The King Radio van is harder to find. Both have always a blue tint window, black with turn signals, and chrome plastic bases. The KGW radio van I've seen quite a few times on eBay recently. In its baggy, they're asking like $400 for it. I would say it's probably worth more like $200 or $300. I think that's what I spent for that one. Now the King Radio van in mint condition, I've never actually seen it in its baggy. These weren't on a card pack, they were just separately in little Ziploc bags basically. I think this one would be worth more like $500 or $600 mint. I don't think I've ever actually seen one mint, and this one is in pretty good shape. It set me back about $260 or $270 if I remember correctly. The Torino Stalker also makes its debut for 1975, based on a Ford Grand Torino, I would say. Cool casting with a really nice paint job and tampo work. Chrome plastic base, quite simple, nothing really on there other than some leaf springs and the side exit exhaust pipes. A similar casting to the Monte Carlo Stalker. Both look quite nice together racing around the track. And interestingly, even though they're different cars, they share the same base. Another Mattel cost-cutting venture, I would say, and therefore don't have a descriptive name on the bases of these cars. This red Torino Stalker would probably fetch around $100 in this condition, and possibly more. the Redline tires, it is quite rare and sought after by collectors. Yet another new casting for 1975, the Tough Customer. This is a beefy all-metal tank with a plastic turret on top, and the first time I think we've seen these little black wheels, which of course became quite common on a multitude of different vehicles over the years. There are some base variations. This one has Tough Customer written right on it, whereas this one does not. It's got it blanked over. The main variation for this year of tank is the difference in the paint. The one on the right is a glossy olive green, whereas the one on the left is a flat olive drab. They actually roll pretty good considering how small those wheels are. And the turrets do turn around 360 degrees. The guns do raise and lower to some extent. Vagabomb also makes its introduction in 1975 based on a elongated Chevy Vega funny car. The hinge is quite delicate on the back, so if you're buying these used, be careful that it's not broken there. Well, I guess they're all used, but depending on condition. The orange one is the more common of the two, and the green is the very hard to find alternate color. These cars can set you back anywhere between $70 and $100 for a nice condition orange version. And for one like this in green, I think this was $250. I have seen them as high as $300 to $400 if they are completely mint. So a fairly tough vehicle to find. A nice heavy casting too that does well on the track because of its long wheelbase. Warpath is the last vehicle we have in the 1975 collection, and this is not a new casting. It was first released in 1971 as the AMX2, based on a concept car, I believe, from AMC, and it was again seen in 1973 with the name Exploder, and now changed to Warpath for 1975. There goes the clock. Anyways, this car, I've seen a picture of it with these two kind of louvers opened up at the back, but I tried gently to open mine and they feel rather stiff, so I'm not going to open them up. I'm just going to leave it like that, and we've got basically the exact same car, except one is the Herfy's Promotional. Very nice little all-metal casting with the new Warpath name on the base, if they're both the same. Basically, both the same. This one here is worth about $50 or $60, and the Herfy's one is worth about $200 plus in this condition. Quite hard to find as far as Herfy's cars goes. Which brings me to the cars I don't have in my collection yet. I'm still on the hunt for. One of them is a version of the Chief Special, but a Herfy's. Instead of saying fire department on it, it's actually a Herfy's car. Let's take a look on my computer now at those final vehicles. Okay, let's go over to the computer, which I have perched on the junkyard. And there is the Chief Special with the Herfy's logo on the side. That car's worth about $200 or so nowadays, in good shape. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it because quite often they're actually forged. And it's not part of the main line, it's a promotional car. I have seen this car come up a couple of times for sale. The Winter's Ball exclusive Chevy Monza 2+2. $1,500 was the last time I saw it for Buy It Now on eBay in March 2014. Reported value at the time of the HotWheelsCollector.com was $2,500, but I don't think anyone would spend that much on it. Maybe I'm wrong. And yeah, the other two vehicles I'm missing are also in this promotional section. There's the vehicles I do have, and there they are. Seen these ones, at least the white one, come up for sale a couple of times in varying condition. Supervan from the Flying Colors Toy Fair 1975. It came out in two different colors, and I have also seen it with window variations, so blue or black. And you know, you can see this one has blue windows as well as being chrome. The white one, $1,600. I've seen it come up for sale at least twice in the last few years. $635 it sold back in September 2013. There was one that was in worse condition for $12.95. Buy it now. I think someone did actually buy it. And the chrome one I've seen not on eBay but on another website. I think he was asking $3,500 for it. Reported value from years ago was $2,100. So not too likely I'll be adding those to my collection. I think with that kind of money I might go out and buy myself a real super van to drive around. Well, I hope you enjoyed this latest installation from my new vintage Hot Wheels collection series. And like I said in the last video, I'm going to be putting one of these videos out roughly once a week. And our next video will be, of course, 1976. We'll get those cars off the wall for you next. And on through the years, week by week, we'll get through this massive Hot Wheels collection full of interesting variations, rare cars, and promotional pieces. Stay tuned and happy hunting.